Welcome back. You're still tuned in to Salam Media, and this is hashtag Boycott for Justice. With this podcast series where we explore the crucial intersections of ethics, economics, and activism in the fight for Palestinians' rights. And in today's episode, we'll be focusing on a very pressing issue: South Africa's coal exports to Israel, and the growing calls to halt some shipments that make their way to Israel, and also an arms embargo that I think most, if not all, countries across the world do agree that needs to be put on the illegitimate, illegal state of Israel. And joining us to discuss these critical topics is none other than Roshan Dadoo, the coordinator of South African BDS Coalition. Roshan will help us understand the motivations, behind the call, to halt the coal supply to Israel, and some of the recent movements to stop Israeli-bound shipments, and just the broader context of the arms embargo against Israel. Roshan, always a pleasure having you on Salam Media. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you again for having us here on the show.
Yeah. Today we have a range of issues that we'll be touching on, but just quickly, I want us to start on one that I feel like is quite important. South Africa still supplying coal to the illegitimate state of Israel. So essentially, South Africa is busy at the ICJ making all the right noises, but in the background, the coal that is mined here by South Africans who know what apartheid is and who know what oppression is essentially fueling this genocide. Can you maybe unpack and expand a bit on that aspect, which is quite mind-boggling, if you ask me?
Yes, I mean, I think it's also worth keeping an eye on the Israeli economy, which is just tanking at the moment. The ratings agencies, Standard & Poor, they're predicting 0% growth for next year. And Moody's, remember Moody's and their downgrades of the South African
Our
economy.
good friend Moody's.
A good friend Moody's is predicting Israel's heading towards junk status. And that really shows that the impact of boycotts, divestments, and sanctions. And in fact, the chair of the Israeli Export Institute, he said, BDS and boycotts have changed Israel's global trade landscape. We fight every day, hour by hour, for Israeli industry abroad. Economic boycotts and BDS organizations present major challenges. And in some countries, we are forced to operate under the radar, which sounds very sinister. But coming back to South African exports, coal is our #1 export to Israel. And it's a small amount of the coal that we produce, but Israel depends on coal for 22% of its electricity generation. So it's actually quite a lot for Israel. And now Colombia, as we know, have stopped selling coal. The president announced this, I think it was August, and then the relevant ministries followed up with a regulation. I think in September it was issued. So they have stopped selling coal. They were the #1 exporter, and we were the third after Russia. So obviously we are now at least #2, if not, we haven't got the latest figures of the exports from Russia, but we could well be the #1 exporter of coal. And obviously this coal, the question of, well, how do we know where the coal goes to? The coal goes to generate electricity, so it goes into the national grid. Now, the national grid obviously fuels both the military, it fuels the illegal settlements, and, obviously at the moment, we can say that it is fueling the genocide. So I think we are all third-party states are now under an obligation to prevent as well as punish genocide under the provisional measures rulings of the ICJ. And then also with the additional General Assembly resolution on the advisory opinion of the ICJ, third-party states now have to end their complicity in what is now determined to be an illegal occupation. So it's clear that if we are sending coal, we are going to be held complicit, both in the illegal occupation, the illegal settlements and in the genocide. So it's vital, obviously. I mean, this applies to all third-party states, but obviously South Africa, having put ourselves out there and being lauded around the world for having taken the case under the Genocide Convention against Israel, there's a particular scrutiny of our implementation of the findings of that court, and especially now when we've just presented the how many thousand pages documentation called the memorial, outlining the evidence in detail of why we are convinced that this is a genocide, and therefore the Genocide Convention should be applied. So yes, we're really pushing hard on this, because it's embarrassing for all of us. It's not just the government, or not just Glencore, the biggest mining company, which also was the biggest mining company in Colombia, that's now stopped selling coal. It's all of us. We're proud that the government took the ICJ case, and now we want to be proud that they're implementing it, because reading any legal opinion will consider that technology, military supplies, ammunition, weapons, and fuel are essential for the activities of the Israeli military. So it's quite clear that we need to stop this.
I want to touch a bit on our government. As you mentioned, South Africa at the forefront, and head and shoulders above everyone else when it comes to advocating for the rights of people of Palestine. I'm sure, you've had numerous attempts to reach out to government to let them know that this is happening. What has been their response? And Glencore itself, have you had any interactions with them? I know there have been some protests to their offices. If you can just maybe expand on that, and if there's any leeway or way forward in us ultimately making sure that there's no trade, particularly of such an important resource like coal, to the illegitimate state of Israel.
Yes, I mean, we have reached out to all the relevant government departments, and we have finally managed to secure a meeting this coming week with the Minister of Trade Industry and Competition. And so we really want to, work with them. And we're sure that government is also looking at how they can make sure they're not complicit, and how they can act to prevent genocide as well. So we're hoping to have a really positive and in-depth discussion on this, and to see how we can make sure that these coal sales are stopped. It will really look so good on South Africa and on the government if they were to make this call, just as the Colombian president was lauded now around the world for having done so. And I think, there can't be obstacles to preventing fueling genocide. The international law is clear. There can't possibly be any reason for us not to be able to stop selling coal to Israel. It's, as I said, a small amount of the coal we produce. There are plenty of other markets. There's already this news that all the coal is being exported, and that's why we are suffering with load shedding and electricity cuts and overpriced coal. So I'm sure between the two, we can find a way that both assists us in our electricity issues here, and also make sure we're not complicit in genocide.
Roshan, I want us to move now to maritime, and all of the ships that are maybe docking on our shores or our neighbors' shores, and they are ultimately making their way to Israel. Is there anything can be done in that front? What more can you tell us regarding that?
Well, absolutely. I mean, there is provision in our domestic legislation for the minister to refuse docking permits. And we are calling on the Minister of Transport, Minister Creasy, to do just that. I mean, recently we were tracking a ship called Catherine that was coming around the coast. The BDS movement globally had been tipped off that there were explosives on board headed for Israel. It came from Vietnam, the ship. It wasn't going up the Red Sea because of the Houthis and their solidarity actions. And so this ship was coming around our coast and then up the west coast of Africa. It didn't try to dock in South Africa, but it did try to dock in Namibia. And through the BDS networks and our Pan-African network, we managed to get the Namibian government to rescind the docking permits, and they investigated the cargo and found that indeed it was carrying 8 containers of RTX explosives, which is used for those kind of anti-personnel mines, which most countries that have signed the Ottawa Convention should not anyway. They're considered illegal, but clearly Israel hasn't. And we managed to delay the ship for 2 months through following, tracking it and seeing where does it look like it's going to try and dock, and then contacting activists and governments in different countries. Malta refused to let it dock. Portugal took its flag off the ship. Of course, Germany, genocidal Germany, then allowed the ship to put its flag. But, it shows that mobilization around the world and around our continent, we can really try and literally stop weapons and explosives and so on at reaching Israel, at least to delay it. And Israel says it's running out of that really lethal, disgusting explosives. But we should, in fact, make that call. Malaysia has done so, refused docking of ships coming and going to Israel and Israeli ship companies. And we know that the Zim Lines is docking here frequently. We have on 2 other occasions, I think 2009 and 2021, managed to not offload Zim Lines ship through the actions of dock workers. And we're hoping that, the combined efforts of the trade unions with the government exercising its jurisdiction in this regard, we can ensure that we're not letting these ships dock here, and we're not helping to transport explosives and weapons and ammunitions to Israel. But also, we want to get some clarity from our government that the NCACC, that is supposed to ensure that weapons that we sell from South Africa do not get into the hands of either countries in conflicts and civil wars, ought to be able to ensure that no weapons coming from here are going to Israel. And if that's the case, then we're not quite sure why our government can't declare an arms embargo, because if we're not selling weapons, then declaring an arms embargo would be quite a simple thing to do. So we are
I
also
wanted,
trying to push on
sorry,
that.
I'm so sorry, Roshan, to jump in there. I wanted to touch a bit on that. Why is there no official, kind of a statement from South Africa's government that lets everyone know that there's an arms embargo against the state of Israel? It almost feels like something that is unofficial, but there's no real, tangible statement that we can all fall back on and confirm that it is indeed happening.
Absolutely. We're not sure either. I mean, if, as they say, or imply that they are not selling weapons to Israel, then you would think it would be quite simple to make such a statement. And obviously, by not doing so, it makes us suspicious that there may be ways in which certain, military parts or dual use items may be being exported. So we would also like to know why they can't make such a statement. And of course, if there are any of those sort of items being exported from here, then really that needs to be stopped immediately. And then a statement could be made that South Africa has declared an arms embargo against Israel, just as we demanded of the world against apartheid South Africa. I think the whole world now is looking to South Africa, and the Palestinians, of course, always take great courage from solidarity actions coming from South Africa because of our history. So definitely, we would like to know as well, why is the government not able to make a statement calling it for an arms embargo and ensuring that we are not complicit in any way in military or dual use items of that sort.
All right, Roshan, we're going to leave it there for now. We'll be with you again next week. Thank you so much for giving us your time. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
There you go. That was Roshan Dadoo, coordinator at SA BDS. And as usual, on Fridays, having a very, very important and I think one of my favorite segments of Salam Media, the hashtag Boycott for Justice mini series podcast. If you've missed any of the other ones, I think you can check them on our various social media pages, including YouTube. And we'll be with you again next week, Friday, when we speak on the latest when it comes to BDS on Israel and how it is just changing. I think what Roshan mentioned was very, very important. The fact that rating agencies are already saying there's a 0% projection of economic growth on Israel. So basically, the economy is not growing. This genocide has taken business away from them. There's been divestments and boycotts of their products. So essentially, the little that you are doing on your side, when you're not buying these products or acquiring these services that are essentially supporting and giving money to the Israeli occupying forces, you are making a difference. We'll be with you again next week, Friday, for another episode of Boycott for Justice. It's goodbye for now.
We are here in the middle of a Zahra neighborhood. The whole neighborhood is already destroyed. More than 17 towers are down. Here, as you can see, the firefighters trying their best to help. The people are still under the rubble. A lot of the people.
Join Hamza on his exclusive South African tour as he shares his personal experiences, never before seen footage, and powerful insights on the ongoing genocide in Gaza. This is more than just a talk. It's an invitation to witness Gaza through the lens of Hamza Sha'alan. Don't miss this opportunity to meet the photojournalist who brought Gaza's pain and perseverance to the world in its darkest moments. Follow Salam Media on social media pages for more on this tour and be part of the conversation.